2. Adjustment of the feeder's feed length. When designing the mold, the first step is to unfold the product. Then, determine the material width and length. The material length mentioned here refers to the length after the first stamping and before the second stamping, which is the length the strip needs to be fed. For example, the P-CHOM 25.0 marked on this mold means that the feed length for each cycle is 25.0 millimeters. So, how can we control the feed length on the roller feeder? When the feeder rollers start to rotate, the longer the rollers rotate, the longer the feed length. The distance the rollers rotate is determined by this eccentric cam, this shaft, and the distance from the shaft to the center of rotation of the eccentric cam determine it. The greater the distance, the greater the rotation distance of the rollers. Therefore, when adjusting the feed length, first loosen this screw, then turn this nut clockwise. This means the shaft of the eccentric cam is farther from the center of the cam. This can increase the feed length. On the other hand, if you turn the screw counterclockwise, you can decrease the feed length. So how can we make the feed length exactly match the length we need? First, set the machine to 180 degrees. That is, stop the slider at the bottom dead center. Then place the material between the upper and lower rollers of the feeder. Loosen this and press the handle down. This will hold the material firmly in place. Then use a small piece of material and place it close to these two guide rollers. Draw a straight line on the surface of the material. Then start the machine. Let the machine complete several cycles continuously. Use a small piece of material again and place it close to these two guide rollers. Draw another straight line. Then use a caliper to measure the distance between the two reference lines. Then divide that by the number of machine cycles. This will give you the exact feed length of the feeder. When adjusting the feed length, first, raise this release adjuster. The material, from start to finish, must always be clamped between the upper and lower rollers. Also, make sure the machine starts moving when it's near the bottom dead center position. Then stop the movement when it is near the bottom dead center position. It must never start or end at the top dead center. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to accurately check the feed length of the machine. Now, let's do a live demonstration. First, loosen the nut on the release adjustment device and unscrew the nut. Then raise the release screw. Next, insert the safety pin into the control cabinet. Only then can the machine operate. Then, feed the material into the plastic machine. Use the material strip to get close to the positioning wheel. First, draw a line on the material. Run the Shejang punch press for several cycles. Draw another new line on the material surface. Use a caliper to measure the distance between the two lines. Just now, the punch press completed a total of 4 cycles. Now, the distance between the two lines is 56 millimeters. After calculation, the feeder advances 14 millimeters per feed. However, the feed distance for this set of dies is 19.5 millimeters. Therefore, the feeder's feed distance is still insufficient and needs to be readjusted. When the feed length is not enough, we need to turn this screw so that the eccentric disc's shaft moves away from the center of this eccentric disc. Then, tighten this screw. Turn the machine to the next point. Insert the material into the roller feeder. Draw a new reference line here. When checking the overall feed length, we must ensure that this release screw does not press against the release bracket. In other words, the feeder must always keep the material pressed tightly. Then run the machine. Now the machine has completed 5 cycles. Draw another straight line on the material. After inspection, the material has been fed a total of 88 millimeters over 5 cycles. This indicates that the feed length is still insufficient. We still need to first loosen this nut. Rotate this screw counterclockwise. This will increase the feed length. After making the adjustment, tighten this nut again. Then turn the machine to about the 180-degree position. Continue drawing a line on the material. Let the machine run for another 5 cycles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then continue drawing a line on the material strip. After inspection, it can be seen that the total feed for 5 cycles is now 102 millimeters. This means that each cycle is feeding 0.9 millimeters too much. The feed length still needs further adjustment. Loosen this screw again. Rotate this screw clockwise. Repeat the above steps. Turn the machine to a position near 180 degrees. Redraw the line on the material. Continue operating the punch press. Then, draw a second line on the material. After inspection, it can be seen that the total feed is 99 millimeters. It feeds in 5 steps in total. The total length is 99 millimeters. This means that each feed length is 19.8 millimeters. Compared to the actual feed of the die, which is 19.5 millimeters, it's 0.3 millimeters more. Further adjustment is still needed. There is also a Vernier scale on the eccentric disc. Currently, the pointer is at 24.0. Since the feed is more than the actual die feed, we simply need to adjust the eccentric shaft slightly downward, positioning it accordingly. After making the adjustment, tighten this screw again. After inspection, it can be seen that in 5 strokes, the total feed is 98 millimeters. Now the feed length of the roller feeder is 19.6 millimeters. That's 0.1 millimeters more than the die feed of 19.5 millimeters. The feed length of the feeder differs from the die feed by 0.1 millimeters. This is completely within the acceptable range.